On this
that we
episode
really
of
need
Who Dem,
to focus on is our messaging and around the economy. For the life of me, I can't figure out why people put more faith in the Republican Party when it comes to the economy, that they think they're going to handle it better when they've always, as you said, right, they've always fucked it up.
We're rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Who Dem podcast. My name is Damian Galvan, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Gil Cisneros. How are you, Representative?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dave?
Good, good, good. You're back in California right now?
I am. I am in California right now.
That's nice. That's nice. I also, I'm back in Georgia. I decided to extend my stay a couple more days, spend time with family. It's been the longest period this past 4 months that I've gone without seeing them.
Yeah.
So it was nice to finally get to see them again.
Family's doing good?
Family's doing good. Yeah, everything. Actually, I've been making fun of my mom recently because when I was younger, she would hound my grandma for doing renovations to her house all the time.
Yeah.
And now every time that I come back home, she's trying to get something done, whether it's like, a little switch up in the kitchen or, repainting a bedroom.
Right.
So it's funny to see her, turn into the mom that she had complained about, doing all these renovations. But it's a good time to be doing renovations and investing in houses because of a Memorial Day. The New York Times just came out with an article talking about it's the best time to buy grills. It's the best time to buy electronics. What did you spend your Memorial Day doing, Representative?
Well, I didn't spend it shopping. We actually went, well, a couple things we did this weekend. Sunday, I went, it's Los Angeles, LA Fleet Week. So they had some Navy ships come in. I think a couple of Coast Guard cutters. Canadian ship was in also. But I went down there, toured a couple of the ships, did that Sunday. I actually got to check out an unmanned ship that they have out there. Kind of interesting.
What do you mean? What do you mean by unmanned?
It's like there's nobody on the ship. It's I mean, they have people there that maintain it and keep it, but
Sure.
it's meant to kind of go out and kind of like a drone. People will like control the drones from somewhere, another location. Same thing with these. These are ships that kind of operate the same way. They're kind of controlled by remote control, away from not being on the ship. They can do it on the ship, but that's not what it's meant for. So,
Gotcha. That's awesome. I didn't know that those existed.
yeah, they're coming out more and more. So
Are they large
no,
vessels?
they're not large. It's not like a destroyer or like an aircraft carrier or anything like that. But it's just another tool I guess they have in the toolbox that kind of allows them to kind of go in certain places where hopefully nobody's put in harm's way out there, and they're still able to operate. So it's actually kind of cool. And then yesterday on Memorial Day, we actually went and just went to 3 different events in different parts of the district, just kind of celebrating Memorial Day and kind of hanging out with veterans and doing that stuff, right? So it was a good day. It was a good day to kind of get around and see different things.
When was the last time that you were on a? I don't know the differences between like the destroyers or the aircraft carriers and all of that. When was the last time that you were on a Navy ship?
God, I think in 23 or something, I went and paid another visit to some other ships. I think like in Norfolk and San Diego. But it's been a long time since I was actually stationed on one. And I was actually kind of thinking about that the other day. I've been out of the Navy now 21 years. So it's
How long were you in the Navy for?
about 10 years total. A little bit more.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was a great experience. It's something I look back on very fondly. I'm very proud that I got to do that and had the opportunity to do it. And it definitely, I think, has played a big part in my life of what I've done post Navy. Right, I think all my education, I always say, was paid for because of my service, in one way or the other. And I think it's kind of helped me too, right? I think it's good to have it's good to have veterans in Congress, right, who understand what our men and women in uniform are dealing with. And so it is definitely a plus there to be a veteran. And The other thing we kind of did before I left DC is on Thursday we went to go wash the walls of the Vietnam memorial with a bunch of other members from one of the caucuses, bipartisan caucus for country caucus. We they do that every year on Memorial Day or that Memorial Day weekend. So we did it before we all left and went on the break, and it was it's pretty cool. It's a good event to do that. Some other people are out there doing that as well, and so it just kind of gives us an opportunity to kind of say, in a different way, right, to say thank you and kind of contribute to helping maintain the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool. I feel like every time Memorial Day comes around, you get little bits of information,
Hmm.
whether it be about like the Vietnam Veterans Memorial or whether it be, learning about what the different branches of the military actually do. I remember actually a couple of years ago, I had a class where we talked about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and I didn't know that it has so much history behind it. Like even going back to the woman that sculpted it and like how the
Hmm.
process came along, where it was like basically everyone anonymously submitted a bunch of different designs,
Right.
and she ended up winning it super young. Like I think she was like 23 or 24 at the time.
Hmm.
So it's awesome to even see how those stories get memorialized in the celebration of the people that put their lives on the line to defend our country.
Right. No, yeah, excuse me. That is a great story about that young lady who was able to do it and got selected. And I think that was her, I believe it was her first big project that she ever really had worked on or done. So
Yeah,
pretty
and I
amazing.
don't know, I don't know if this is, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty certain that she was also a foreign student, if I'm not mistaken. She came to, I think, Yale, on visa to study here in the United States. Um, and that's definitely something that is, in the topic of conversation today with what Trump is trying to do with Harvard.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, what have you heard so far with all of this? I know it stems back to the fact that like he wanted them to make some policy changes and he wanted them to change their admissions process, and now it's escalating to them losing billions and billions of dollars in funding.
Yeah, well, they're losing the funding, right? A lot of the research grants that Harvard does have been kind of taken away. They also, I guess, taken away their ability um, to accept foreign students. So it's just it's again, it's this attack against higher education that this administration is on. They're going after these things, and unfortunately, they're doing it in the sense of that they're trying to say that, well, they're trying to protect um, Jewish students, or it's about kind of getting rid of DEI, and these things have nothing to do with that, right? They want to take away their ability to educate people, and they're trying to to do that with higher education, right? To basically restrict what they're doing and what they're teaching, and try and tell them what they can and can't do. Unfortunately, you're seeing it right now with the service academies, which they actually do control. Um, a lot of the groups that they had, the affinity groups and stuff, have kind of gone underground because they told them they couldn't have them anymore. Or they're taking books out of libraries. They're there's a great quote by John Paul Jones, who was like one of our earliest naval history, our um, naval hero, right, from the Revolutionary War, and he has this quote about like what a good naval officer should be, and he talks about how it's having a great liberal education is key to to being an officer, and they're taking that away from these individuals, or the students that are there. They want stormtroopers, but part of the ability and why it is, education is important, I think, to our officers, is because we want them to be able to think. We want them to be able to formulate ideas, put things together, and come up with creative solutions. And when you kind of take away the ability to teach that and for them to learn, it's not good. It's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for their troops.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, I would agree that our education system and our higher education system can be improved. It can be made better, it can be strengthened. But one of the things this right wing coalition, this MAGA movement has really, emphasized is not pursuing a higher education and making it more
Mhm.
difficult. Recently, someone we've talked about on the show before, Charlie Kirk, he was actually in Cambridge. He was debating students in Cambridge. And you don't need me to tell you that that did not go well.
Mhm.
He got absolutely destroyed. But one of these things that he kept going back to was this myth that higher education is, it's not useful. It leaves you with a bunch of debt and it doesn't give you skills. One of the things that was most surprising for me when I got to college was actually not what you're taught in terms of the courses that you're taking, but how you're taught to think and how
Mhm.
you're taught to think critically and analyze a situation and how you're taught to actually be able to go and research something. And I think it's kind of funny because a lot of these people, they'll go online and they'll be like, do your own research. Well, part of doing your own research is knowing how to research. And these
Right.
higher education institutions, they teach you, small things. It's not so much about the books that you're reading, but how you're analyzing them and how you're reading and annotating and what you're taking away from them. So I think it's so, I don't know if it's a disservice is an understatement.
Yeah.
It's a disservice to the American people to tell them that higher education isn't valuable.
You know, why do we take math, right? I think we pretty much use simple arithmetic in our, day-to-day lives, kind of adding things, subtracting, a little multiplication here and there. But, um, I took calculus in college, right? And I'm like, why did I need to take calculus? I've never ever used it
Yep.
outside, right? But you take math because it teaches you how to problem solve. And that's really what math is about, right? It's solving problems and learning how to find solutions and getting there and getting in the details and kind of coming up with an equation that can kind of go and it's going to fix and solve a problem, which is something we do in our daily lives, right? We're constantly solving problems, and math is an important element of that kind of teaches you that. So it is something that is important, right? In the sense that am I using calculus on a daily basis? No, but did it teach me how to problem solve? Yes. And is that something that's useful? Yes. And
Yeah.
so it does have a purpose.
No, 100%. I equate it to like going to the gym, right? Like
Mhm.
never in real life are you going to need to move a dumbbell in this specific motion, but it trains the muscles that you will use when you're doing something else, whether that's,
Right.
doing yard work or you're building something. It's similar. You're not
Mhm.
going to do that specific, calculus problem that you saw on a test from 20 years ago, but
Right.
you're still going to activate the same part of your brain that you
Mhm.
used to solve that problem back then. And yeah, it's just it's super super unfortunate. And going back to the international students in specific, um, there's so many different problems with this ban or this attempted ban on international students, whether that's like just the First Amendment implications, the fact that a university can't decide who they want to admit, but also
Mhm.
like the larger repercussions, right? Like right now, I think that it in some ways is a victory for the Trump administration and for Donald Trump because that's what he said he wanted to do. He wants to act, tough and macho and control this and that. But I think there's going to be serious repercussions 4, 5, 6, 7 years in the future, in terms of, you know, our institution's ability to recruit national students, but also our adversaries' ability to recruit international students. Is that a conversation that's being had at all? Like, is it a threat that China can maybe start to recruit some of these people that, who would have gone to Harvard, now they're going to a university, there?
Well, I mean, we have the best educational system, higher educational system in the world, right? There are students from all over, the world, right, that come to American universities because we do have the best schools. But there was an article that I was reading the other day. It was talking about how, European countries are coming now to recruit, researchers and college professors, uh, over to Europe, to do the research for them and to do the things that they were doing over here. because this administration is taking that away. It's going to create a vacuum. I mean, the research that these universities do, right? It's just so many, everything from technology to medicine. Um, it's important. And when you kind of go and you take that away, and we're not doing that anymore, you're creating a void, and it is going to have effects.
Yeah, and I think back to, I'm a big history buff, love World War II in
Hmm.
specific, or not the war itself, but analyzing the history of it. And it takes me back to kind of, ultimately why we won World War II was because we developed the atomic bomb before Germany did. And a big reason that we were able to develop the atomic bomb before Germany did is because Germany ostracized a lot of the very bright minds that
Hmm.
they had inside of their universities, and those very bright minds ended up coming to the United States. And not
Right.
only did that have implications for winning the Second World War, it had implications for winning the Cold War
Hmm.
and basically getting the United States to be, the global superpower that today, it is essentially uncontested global superpower for,
Right.
you know, at least the last 30 years. So, are there like national security concerns there as well with the future of warfare and what people are going to be able to develop as a consequence of, having access to these insanely intelligent individuals?
Oh, I would think so, right? It's definitely going to be a problem, like like you said, right? It's the scientists and everything that we had come from Europe. Uh, you know, Einstein, right? He's probably the most famous. They not only do these people play a key role, like in winning, like you said, winning World War II, winning the Cold War, but also developing the space program, right? And so I think when you kind of create that void, it is going to have, I think, effects, right, on everything that we kind of do in our life. I mean, a lot of the stuff that kind of that was developed either for military technology or from space are things that we kind of use now, right? I mean, everybody has a GPS system now in their phone. That was first created. It had military for a military purpose. And so, but it's something that's kind of morphed into, everyday use that people use. I mean, I don't even go anywhere pretty much without putting the address into my phone to make sure I can find the quickest, shortest way to get there, right? And try to
Yeah.
avoid the traffic. So I think when you kind of look at things like that, what are we going to miss, or what's going to come later, or what are we not going to have? And it is going to kind of, I think one of the reasons that we've been able to thrive and why we are the economic superpower, right? Or we are, is because we do have that technology, we do have the research, we do have the ability to kind of go out and create these things. And if you get rid of the people who do it, it's not going to happen here anymore, right? You can't make
Yeah.
it happen if the people here are leaving and going somewhere else.
No, absolutely. One of my favorite quotes from the last administration was Joe Biden saying, "We are America and we own the finish line."
Yeah.
And we own the finish line because we were able to recruit these, scientists. And it's interesting as we're talking, you start to see, at least, I start to see how interconnected everything is, right? It's one thing for Trump to say, okay, these foreign international students are no longer going to be allowed to attend these universities. And then it's another thing for him to say, these universities are no longer going to get funding, but they ultimately lead to the same consequence. You were talking about GPS and how that was, used for the military. The internet. The internet came from the space program,
Hmm.
right? A lot of the mRNA vaccines. That's another thing that came from funding public universities and students that were often international students
Right.
partaking in that same research. So it's like a double whammy. One, you're losing the actual students, and two, you're losing the funding to actually be able to research things that today, we just had a pandemic. We saw, how vaccines saved millions and millions of lives.
Right.
And that was an investment we made 30 years ago. If you would have asked someone then, do you think that this investment would, still be helpful, 20, 30 years from now? They probably would have told you no. But we see the benefit of investing in our public institutions.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean the research that they did, right, to develop the vaccine happened in record time. and they tried to do it in other places. And, I think there was a Chinese vaccine. I believe the Russians had one too, but were not as good from what we heard as the ones that were developed here in the United States. But, if you get rid of those people, or you stop investing in that, or you try and, do it in emergency situations, it's like, oh my God, we need this now. So let's, the people to do it aren't going to be there.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see, what actually ends up coming from this. One interesting perspective, and I kind of do subscribe to this because I was wondering, why is Trump going after Harvard so hard? More so than any other university. And, obviously the first thing that people would say is it goes back to the protests last summer, last year, that these universities had on their campus. I think that it really is because Barron Trump got rejected from Harvard. And Donald is upset and he's trying to wield his power and get back at Harvard
Yeah.
University. Um, but again, that's my thought there. It wouldn't surprise me with how petty this administration is that that's the reason that he decided to do all of this.
It wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, we know he's narcissistic and kind of holds these personal grudges. It could even go to he got rejected from there, right? He probably did. Um, so it could go that deep into it as to why he's so upset and going after them. But he's using the protest and they're saying the anti-Semitic protests that kind of happened on campuses as his excuse to really kind of go on there, right? This has nothing to do with that. What does this research, the federal grant research, have to do with anti-Semitism
No,
or anything, right? It's just his excuse to go after it and to kind of do and try and um, knock down these higher, these institutions of higher education.
yeah, no, and it's funny, or there's some irony here because I can't remember who the individual was, but someone, I think it was from the ADL, came out and was talking about how the policies that Trump are implementing in the name of making sure that anti-Semitism doesn't take place are
Hmm.
actually having repercussions for Israeli international students who can no longer come to the United States. I mean,
Right.
he was talking about individuals that have served in the IDF who are no longer allowed to come into the United States because Trump is trying to crack down on Harvard's anti-Semitism. It's a
Hmm.
paradox that just doesn't seem to add up, but that's half the things the administration does at this point.
Yeah. Well, they act before they think. They
Yeah,
act
yeah.
before they think, and this is definitely not something that was thought out. But it's he has this grudge against him. There's other universities out there too, like Howard University is worried about they're going to lose some federal funding that they have. They actually have an agreement. They actually do research for the Air Force over at Howard, but that could potentially be in jeopardy right now, uh, just because of what they're doing and what they're trying to do is really just go and freeze these grants and go after these universities. And they're going after Howard for different reasons, right? That's basically they want to kind of say it's that's diversity. It's they're going after for that reason because for whatever Howard shouldn't have got this because it was only given it because it was a HBCU, which is untrue. But it is they're doing good things over there, and they should be able to keep that grant.
Yeah, something that I heard too, I think it was uh, someone from Harvard University talking about how it's a misconception to say that these grants are given to them. They're
Hmm.
earned by the universities for the
Right,
research that they do.
right. They have to apply. It's the research that they're doing. It's the fun things that the government needs, right? The government wants, right? Things that problems that need to be solved. And so yeah, they're not earned. It wasn't like somebody just wrote them a blank check and said, "Okay, hey, we're just going to give you, $10 million for research." It's there's a whole process, and it's not easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that annoys me too is that it feels, at least to me, for the time that I've been studying politics, is
Mhm.
that Republicans come in and fuck things up, and then a Democratic president has to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about this in the future too, where it's like right now, they did the same thing with Doge, where they were like, we're going to cut all of these things, and then they looked back and they're like, wait, we just fired the guys that control the nukes. We have to get them
Mhm.
back. It's the same thing I think is going to happen here. They're like, oh, we're cutting, funding for these DEI institutions, this, that, the other. And then they're going to look back and they're going to be like, oh, they were doing cancer research and they were doing, research to study Alzheimer's or to combat diabetes or, all of these other issues that, exist out there. And then some Democratic president is going to have to come and clean up the mess that they made. And like you said, probably have to deal with a major issue in a short period of time, like Joe Biden had to
Right.
and respond to that because and just like Obama had to, and to some extent how Clinton had to, and it just keeps going on and on.
Well, we need to, as Democrats, right? I think this is one thing that we really need to focus on is our messaging and around the economy. For the life of me, I can't figure out why people put more faith in the Republican Party when it comes to the economy, that they think they're going to handle it better when they've always, as you said, right, they've always fucked it up. Our last three Republican presidents have all left, the country in worse condition than when they got there. George W, George H, uh, Trump. Everything was going worse when they all left.
Yeah,
And it's always, like you said, a Democrat has had to come in and kind of set everything straight, right, and put it back on track.
yeah,
But they are horrible, and right now we're going down that same path again. The Republicans in the House want to add like nearly $4 trillion to the deficit, right? And they all want to talk this like, oh, people like Chip Roy and these physical conservatives, the House Freedom Caucus about like we need to pay attention to the deficits and all our spending and they don't give a damn about that because if they did, they wouldn't have voted for this horrible bill that just got passed last week.
yeah. No, it's ridiculous, and I want to get to that bill in a second. But just going back to this idea too, the other annoying element of that is like not only are Democrats handed a situation that they then have to fix. I
Mhm.
think back to Obama, and this would irritate me so much when I would say, because no one, at least, again, when I was younger on the mainstream media, would ever make this point.
Mhm.
Trump's economy was great. It was strong up until the end. Why? Because it was following the trajectory
Yeah.
of Obama's economy. If Trump would have gone in and done nothing, sat down there, the economy would have done the exact same thing that it did. None of his policies lowered gas. None of his policies raised real wages. None of his policies did any of these things. It was all Obama era work
Right.
that Trump got to reap the benefit of.
Hmm.
And again, he's doing it the same thing he's doing with Joe Biden. And, again, there's critiques of the past administration. There's critiques of how all of that was handled. At the end, the economy was doing better.
Right.
And it was increasing. We were the strongest economy in the world. And
Hmm.
now Trump gets to take credit for that and he gets to blow it around. Like he said the other day, the bad parts are Biden's economy and the good parts are Trump's.
Yeah.
It's
Right
just
now,
so
there's no
irritating to
there's
me.
no, there's no good parts right now. I don't know where the good parts are. So he's
Yeah.
not taking credit for anything. But I mean, he came in. He's the one steering the ship right now, and we saw with the reports, all the different economic reports that after the end of the first quarter of this year, um, we're not good. We're not good, and they didn't react well to his call for new tariffs on Europe that happened at the end, and he already reversed that decision. I mean, there's just no stability here. Everything he's done is uncertainty and chaos, and he makes it hard for people to do business.
No, it's ridiculous, and I love that they keep calling it strategic uncertainty because
Yeah.
like it goes back to the fiscal conservative bullshit too. Like what an oxymoron! You're talking about like you're saying that you're actually the right person to deal with this or whatever, and then you're doing the exact opposite with fiscal
Right.
like you're saying they add it to the deficit.
Hmm.
Um, it's ridiculous is a loss for words. Like I don't know. Everything that they say they stand against or stand for, they're actually against. Everything that they say they stand against, they're actually for. It's such an interesting situation that's going on right now. And where I've been losing my mind recently is with Trump's Truth Social posts and
Uh-huh.
Trump's Twitter posts. The two come to mind right now. And the first one was with Gavin Newsom. We talked about it actually on the first episode. You and Max were talking about how Gavin Newsom went on Charlie Kirk's podcast and basically like agreed with him on a lot of the trans issues. Basically, started saying a bunch of anti-trans stuff, and the idea there is that his messaging is going to be different. Trump comes out yesterday and does a tweet and says that Gavin Newsom he's still letting trans people play in sports. He's still doing this. He's still doing that. It seems like it doesn't matter what Democrats actually say. Donald Trump
Right.
just likes to make up his own reality.
Of course.
And a lot of his followers like to live in it.
Hmm. No, it's 100% right. He lives in his own world, and I mean, what's the whole thing going on with South Africa right now? Right? Ambushed the South African president with this nonsense about how white people are being persecuted over there, uh, and there's just no truth to that.
Yeah, it's absurd. And again, I mean, I don't know. I need a dictionary for the word preposterous, insane, absurd.
Hmm.
I don't even know. It looks like a reality TV show. It looks like
Hmm.
something that HBO would, put $20 million into for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Every single time that a national leader comes in to the White House, it
Hmm.
looks like an SNL skit. And it's it's getting to a point where I think that even some of his strongest supporters are starting to get a little bit concerned about all of these different, strategic uncertainties and these different tactics where he pulled in a TV to like, he does what me and you do in the studio where we're trying to react
Yeah.
to something. He was doing a podcast with the South African president right there and like you
Hmm.
said, ambushing him.
Right.
But kudos to the South African president. He seemed like he was prepared for that conversation,
Hmm.
and handled it pretty well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much. We may see less and less visits to the Oval Office by world leaders because of what's going on there. I think they're all kind of starting to get that feeling that if they go in there and they sit down with him, probably except for Vladimir Putin, uh, they're going to have some negative stuff kind of come at them. Uh, for him to attack and they're trying to get like what he wants.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I have I'm wondering when you see these tweets from Donald Trump or you see these truths. I mean, the way that I read them is like this last one, especially about Vladimir Putin, where he was like,
Hmm.
"I don't know what's gotten into Vlad. This isn't like him." Blah blah blah. I just think that these are like a high school relationship, like high school friendships. The way that they're taught, like these tweets are not serious.
Yeah.
Is your reaction to them like more concern or like? I let out a chuckle every once in a while because I just cannot believe what this guy is putting out onto the internet.
No, I mean, I think all you can do is laugh at what he puts out there, right? It's pretty ridiculous what he's saying. And that, remember, he was supposed to end this like day one, or even before he got into office, he said he was going to end the Ukraine war. Um, he's no closer to doing that. And, who knows what's going to happen now or what they're going to do or what our stance is going to be. Unfortunately, it leaves the Ukrainians in a tough situation, but it is something that does need to be taken care of. And he's just, the thing is, I laugh right now when people say like, "Oh, well, he's a negotiator, right? He's a businessman. He's a negotiator." And he gets taken to the cleaners every time by these people, kind of working with him.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things that I learned the other day was that chapter 9 in The Art of the Deal is all about how he made this fabulous deal for the Taj Mahal. And
Mm.
it's just like, man, even in the book that everyone says that, look at this guy, he's the genius, you can find examples of him failing.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
it's
where's that at
just,
now?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
And again, never takes always willing to take the credit, but never takes responsibility, right? I think when that was closing, I remember him kind of saying, "Well, I only owned a small percentage of it. It wasn't under our management." But I remember too an episode. I used to watch a show. What the hell was the name of his show again?
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. So I
Yes.
used to watch it, but I remember him on there. He took a group of the contestants to the Taj Mahal, and he was bragging about my Taj Mahal. The greatest hotel casino on the planet. And then once it kind of went under, it was like, well, it's not really mine. I only own a small percentage. Like, never ever willing to take responsibility for anything.
No, no, never. I mean, no accountability. But again, what do you expect of him? Like genuinely, it's just a person that frankly has no decency, no
Mm-hmm.
understanding of, humility or respect or, contributing positively to society for that
Mm-hmm.
matter. It really is just like you said, he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
It's all about him. Um, I'm curious because you always bring up shows on or movies on the podcast. Have you seen The Apprentice?
I have
Have you
not
watched
seen
it?
that movie.
Oh, you have to watch it. You have to
Oh,
watch it because
really?
it's what
Okay.
you're saying. I would recommend it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not a huge movie person. I've been trying to get into it. I watched The Apprentice. It was actually Max who recommended it to me, our producer here. And basically, like long story short, Roy Cohn is the guy that basically mentors Trump and teaches him all of these things. And he has these three rules that Trump still follows to this day. And one of these rules is basically what you're saying, where it's always say that you win. It doesn't matter what happened, say that you win.
Mhm.
If someone says that you lost, say that they're lying.
Yeah.
If someone says that you didn't win, say that they didn't win and that they're worse than you and that everyone else is saying that you did win. And when you watch the movie and then go and turn on, Fox News or CNN and they're talking about something that Trump did, you like scratch your head and you're like, wow, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
This guy is just following those three rules, never admitting defeat. In his mind, he thinks he always won. So, to his credit, I guess he always wins.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's
He lives in a delusional world, right?
it's crazy. And another one of these, business ventures scams, I think is all that we can call. I think anything that Trump does from now on, we just have to say his
Hmm.
next scam has been this cryptocurrency that
Yeah.
this cryptocurrency that he dropped. It happened really fast in the news cycle where, the day of I think it was May 24th or May 22nd that they ended up having this dinner. But I think that it still has not gotten enough attention, in my opinion. People literally bought tickets essentially for millions and millions and millions of dollars. They bought bribes
Hmm.
to go and have an anonymous conversation with the president. I
Right.
mean, this looked like something, I don't know if you've seen Squid Games,
Yeah.
but there was people going into the venue wearing masks and like covering their identities and
Really?
yes, so that people wouldn't know who they were. Like it's dystopian. It looks like something that George Orwell would write.
Hmm. No, it does have to get more attention, right? The fact that his family has enriched themselves by like $3 billion just in the few months that he's been president is something that people need to know about. Needs to be brought to attention, right? That he is actually, whether it's getting a plane or like selling, his influence or trying to get people are paying to get his ear, right, and to put ideas in his head and to kind of get things and do what they want, and so it is unfortunate what's going on there, and it's crazy. And the thing that I'm hearing about, it's like we need to hear more about that, but kind of like what I was reading last week, it was still kind of reading about like Congress. They were talking about um, trying to ban stock trading for members of Congress, and I'm like, we should be focusing on the president on this thing right now, what he's doing, and how he's enriching himself, and really kind of using the office of the president to do so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like there's it's the same thing with our education system. I think it's just
Hmm.
a difference in approach, right?
Right.
There are reforms that need to be made. There are changes, there are improvements that could be made to a lot of our systems. I mean, that's part of living in a society.
Yeah.
a society evolves, the standards of decency evolve, the expectations evolve, what is called for in a day-to-day life evolve. And, I feel like the Republican approach is like, well, something's not working. Let's just throw it out. Let's burn it to the ground. Let's get rid of it. And Democratic approach is, let's try to make some changes. Let's try to make the system work for more and more people. And it's the same thing here, with Republicans and what they're doing with this cryptocurrency scam and what they're going to continue to do. Because not only
business deals, and did he really go to the Middle East to for diplomatic purposes, or was it just there to kind of go make deals? Because he's trying to open every place he visited. He's trying to, or he's planning to, or wants to open up a hotel over there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And again, it goes back to everything that they say they stand for, they're actually against. This is the game that I like to play now with Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. Her thing, and this is how, for all the listeners, this is how you can know that the administration is doing something atrocious that you should be looking into a little bit more. She'll come out, she'll get asked a question about it, and she'll say, this is the most transparent administration in history. There's never been an administration that's this transparent. We have all these websites where you can come and see what we're doing. Meanwhile, having closed-door conversations with millionaire mega donors. Mm-hmm. An article just came out earlier today talking about Paul Wolzak. He was this guy that he did a bunch of tax fraud, and his mother raised over $1 million for the Trump campaign and donated a bunch of money. And in his appeal letter to President Trump, he was like, hey, by the way, my mommy did this for you, and she did this, and she did this. Can you please let me out of prison for defrauding millions of people? And Trump did it. Yeah. That's it. Again, it's one of those things where you say that you want to, help with the deficit. Someone is clearly breaking the law. Someone's a criminal. Someone has avoided paying their taxes. And then you give them a handout because they helped you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There was actually an article I was reading earlier today about a sheriff in Virginia who was basically selling badges, deputizing people and giving them a badge, in the county where he was serving as sheriff, and putting the money in his pocket. But he just got pardoned by Trump right before he was getting ready to go to jail for 10 years.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And every single time, I feel like at least once a month, I'll see one headline about someone that was pardoned from January 6th going and doing some shit that they're not supposed to be doing, whether it's breaking into something else or, I think the most recent one just assaulted like a kid or something. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. And again, it's the hypocrisy of the administration that claims to be wanting to, let's get rid of, criminals. Let's deport these criminals. Let's get, at the same time pardoning and releasing convicted actual criminals who have gone through, the legal process and have been found guilty by a jury of their peers. It's absurd. He always manages to play both sides, to do this thing where, he says that he's for freedom while actively taking away freedom. Yeah. It's so I like just upsetting to me.
Well, he doesn't practice what he preaches. We know that, right? Yeah. He just says one thing and does another, and he's done that in his first administration. He's doing it now, and definitely does not think the rules apply to him. So, it's just a horrible situation we're in. So we'll kind of see how things are going to go and how things kind of move forward here.
Time for a quick message from our sponsors. This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our elected officials is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Yeah. Another thing that they, we're doing, again, in the most I just like I just can't believe that this is how they do these things. Is the you called it the one big billionaire bailout act
Right.
or bill
Hmm.
at like 3 a.m. They had you there at like 3 a.m. doing this
Yeah.
in the like it's like again, I say this a couple times on the show, it's comic book villain shit. It's the same thing. It's like this is something that, would happen in a Marvel movie.
Hmm.
Where the supervillain's going to his secret lair at, 3 a.m. to go and do something, hidden from the people. It's the
Yeah.
exact same thing.
No, I mean, we were there. They started that hearing, the Rules Committee hearing, at 1 a.m. in the morning. So, and it went all the way, I think, until I think it finally wrapped up around 5:30 or 6 p.m. or something like that. And then they were trying to figure it out. And then we ended up voting, I think, around after midnight on the PQ and the rule. And I think I laid down in my sofa in my office about 3 a.m., which for a couple hours before we had to go back and vote again.
Wow.
It was a wild and crazy 2 days right there. But it was ridiculous that they thought they could get away with this and that they would be able to kind of, basically, you know, have the hearing at 1 a.m. and that nobody will pay attention and they could just, speed right through it. Uh, but we flooded the hearing. I don't even know how many. I had 4 amendments. Some people had more. I think one person sitting next to me had 14 different amendments they were putting up. But there were hundreds and hundreds of amendments that kind of got put forth there, right? And they drug out the hearing as long as they could in order to try and delay, because they wanted to get people to vote quick before they changed their mind, because they thought, okay, we got them, let's do this real quick before they change their mind. And it was ridiculous. The whole process was ridiculous,
Yeah,
and it's still
so
not done yet because it's got to go to the Senate, and who knows what they're going to do to that bill. Apparently they're not going to, the rumor is that they aren't going to be as strict or make as many cuts that they did on the Senate side like they did on the House. So we'll kind of wait and see. But it'll be the same thing. Everybody will be in an uproar. They'll talk about how they can't vote for this, they can't support it. All the moderates that the moderate Republicans that were like, oh, I'm, if salt is like this important to me and we need this, and they didn't get what they wanted, but they still voted for it. The physical conservatives didn't get what they wanted. They still voted for it. It's just, where's your principle? Where's your backbone?
yeah, well, I mean, their backbone was broken in half, I think,
Yeah,
about 8 years ago by this guy
right.
named Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Because I mean, like this is the example that I always give when, Republicans say that they have a backbone. Ted Cruz's wife, Donald Trump called her, all of these horrible things. And who's the number one ride or die for Ted Cruz?
yeah,
It's Donald Trump every single time.
yeah.
It's absurd. So I have a question going back to this. How is the process normally supposed to work? Like what made this so egregiously weird, the way that they decided to do it at 3 a.m. and trying to sneak it in essentially.
I mean, first of all, having the rules hearing at 1 a.m. in the morning was, that was ridiculous. That is far from normal. I mean, look, the rules committee usually kind of meets late. They kind of, when they're trying to do things, they may meet late at night or do something, right? But they didn't need to do that. They could have done it in the morning. They could have scheduled it like at 8 or 9 a.m. But again, they did it because they wanted to try and hide what they were doing. They didn't want people to speak up there, right? They were hoping nobody would come to the hearing. And that wasn't the case. But I mean, I think the fact that they started that process is what really kind of threw it off. And then after that, they just kind of kept going and going and going and really just kind of pushed it through as fast as they could before again, they didn't want anybody to have time to change their mind on how they were going to vote for this bill. I guess they had the votes that they needed, and they just wanted to knock it out quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to this hypocrisy. I think of when they criticize, protesters. They're like, why are you wearing a mask if you have nothing to hide? Why are you doing it at
Right.
3 a.m. if you have nothing to hide?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And how were you notified about that? Like, did you just get a phone call and it was like, hey, you have to come to the house right now?
No, we have meetings and stuff where that they kind of go over the schedule and what's going on and what the plan was. So they told us, and they wanted people to come forth and put forth amendments. So we got 4 amendments that we got on there that we kind of went and spoke on. And then from there, right, I think we even had like an emergency meeting, like at, I don't know, 0 dark 30. I don't even know what time it was. Really late at night to kind of talk about what their plan was and what they were going to do. And it was just basically the word gets out, and they communicate through your chief and everything too, right? It's like, stay close, don't let anybody go home, because we're going to make sure they get it back if they call votes. So yeah, there's ways about going there that, everybody knew, we knew, right? So, I think we went out to, I had to go to an event. I went to a fundraiser. Then we went and got dinner, and then we kind of came back and just kind of hung out for a little while, and then kind of went to went to go vote, and then came back. And like I said, like around 3 a.m., I just kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to lay down on my sofa in my office and get up here hopefully in a couple hours, before debate ends, and kind of go vote when we have to go vote again.
Yeah, and I think that it ties into what Steve Bannon was talking about with their strategy, like flood the zone, where you just, you pass so much media, you put so many things out there that the media can't even keep up. I
Right.
think this is another one of those strategies where
Yeah.
it's like, hey, we're going to do it at 3 a.m. so that, it can't be breaking news and the media can't report on it. One really cool way that I saw you along with other representatives kind of try to combat that was by creating, shorts or TikToks right
Yeah.
after, at 3 a.m. That's how I heard about it,
Yeah.
through your short. Um, I did, yeah. What's the thought process there? Where you just like, you know what? I just got here. I just finished this. I can't believe this. Like, I'm gonna record this right now.
Yeah, I think it was just to kind of keep people informed, right, of what was going on. So we did one. I did like a little quick one when I got to the Capitol that morning, I think just before 5 a.m. Did one as I was kind of walking up there to go and put my name down to talk about my amendments. And, and then we had the hearing, which are always taped. But yeah, it was just a crazy kind of night. And I think it's just kind of, the thought about that and why we did these things was, one, to keep people informed, but it is just, two, right? That's kind of how a lot of people get their news and stuff right now. It's hey, this is what's going on right now. This is where I'm at. I'm at the Capitol. We're getting ready to vote on this bill at, like, 6 in the morning. It's horrible.
Yeah, no, they get to see literally
Yeah.
like actually I remember just empathizing with you so hard, just being like, oh my God, I cannot imagine having to go to the Capitol at
Yeah.
6 a.m. to go listen to Republicans try to pass through. I mean, like obviously also the context behind all of it. Like they're
Yeah.
going and doing this horrible thing that is going to hurt the American people.
Yeah. Well, if I guess it was one good thing, I didn't have to go because I was already there.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But yeah, and the thing is, right, this bill is horrible, but they're going to focus on, I think, one thing, right, and it's the no tax on tips or overtime, which isn't necessarily true either, right? Because they're still going to take the money out of your check. You still have to report it, and it's only good up to some amount, right? So, which I can't remember what the deductions are right here off the top of my head. I think it was like 25,000, or no, the Senate version I think was like $25,000 or something. But I think they said if you make anything over 160, then you're going to have to pay tips. But it's not really going to make a difference on anybody's pay or what they're taking home. The better thing, and Stephen Horsford, who represents Las Vegas and represents a lot of workers who rely on tips and stuff like that, right? If you really, he made the point, and I agree with this, 100%, is that if you really want to make a difference for these people that rely on tips, raise their wage. raise their salary.
Yeah.
Let's raise the federal working wage, because a lot of like servers and people that they don't make. California's different, right? California doesn't have two different salaries, right? But if you're a service worker, a lot of those places only make like $2, $2 an hour.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of like, oh, well, the rest of they make up in tips.
Yeah.
But, if you really want to make a difference, then pay them a livable wage.
No, 100%. And I mean, I don't want to get into the nerdy nitty grittiness of just like how ineffective this is, but when I was growing up, my parents owned a restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many nuances to what is a tip and how those are distributed and how those are
Right.
shared. Because usually at the end of the night, everyone comes together and they put all of their tips, into a pool,
Yeah.
and you're allowed to take, or every restaurant does it differently, but you can take like 20%, 20% of everyone's is kind of redistributed and shared. But then there's also, I was watching someone talk about like even something more minute, right? Like your DoorDash driver,
Right.
he gets a tip if you decide to tip him, but
Uh-huh.
your Amazon delivery driver doesn't.
Right.
So it creates a situation where two people are functionally doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
bringing something to your door, but now they're being taxed and paid in different ways, and
Right.
it just complicates the system instead of actually, helping it.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. This bill's bad. It's not going to make a difference, and you're right, right. And I think that was one of the things that people were worried about, that it is going to create that inequality amongst workers out there who kind of, like you say, are doing the same thing, but now you have some that are going to get tipped, and some that don't, and but the reality is too, right, is that it's really, again, it's not going to really make a difference. It's not like it's going to move somebody up into like a different income level, or all of a sudden they're going to be able to kind of go and like have a lot better lifestyle now because their tips aren't being taxed, or even like the overtime. They're still going to take the overtime out of your check. You still got to pay state and local taxes on your overtime pay. You still got to pay your FICA, right? They're going to take out for Medicare and Social Security. It's like they always do.
Yeah.
And but now it's beholden on the individuals when they file their taxes to kind of go there and kind of claim it to get it. They would get it now in their return rather than getting it in their pocket, which is what people are assuming, right? And that's going to happen too. And again, this hasn't passed yet. It's still got to go through the Senate, but if it does, people are going to be looking and saying like, "Hey, you guys took money out for my overtime. What's going on?" And well, they still do, right? It's not going to change anything.
Yeah, no, I'm also with you with I'm personally against tipping culture. I got to go outside of the country a couple years ago for the first time. I got to go to Europe, and I think it is just a better system to you pay, and when you're paying, that the person that is serving you is getting paid a livable wage,
Right.
and that like their entire you're not going to make or break their entire week by paying them $5 versus $10.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's just better for culture. And again, especially with like these larger businesses, if you're hiring someone, I'm of the opinion, as a business owner myself, if you're hiring someone, you should be able to pay them.
Yeah.
And so if you're relying on, patrons coming in and paying the salary of your employees, personally, I just don't think that that it's necessarily the best system in the United
Yeah.
States.
No, I agree, and it is. But tipping is like a totally American thing, right? It's
Yeah.
like nobody else really kind of does it, and even when I go overseas, I still kind of feel like I still have to leave a tip, even though you don't, right? But you just kind of feel weird about it if you don't. It's just kind of, I guess, embedded into our culture that you must tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I've heard that in other cultures, it's even offensive if you do tip.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, going back to the big billionaire bailout
Mm-hmm.
bill. I want to ask you some true or false questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
Get your takes on these.
All
So we
right.
talked about it. True or false? It temporarily lowers taxes on tips or overtime.
It, I say no, because it doesn't. Um, and again, right, it hasn't passed yet, but they're still going to take the money out of your check, so
Yeah.
it's not really kind of doing that.
What about permanently lowering taxes on the ultra wealthy?
It doesn't do it permanently, but it did create, I think, a lower or it did lower the taxes at the highest level. But again, it's only while he's in office. You know, whoever's going to come next is going to have to deal with the fallout from this, right?
Yeah, that's the same thing. Just to take a little break here from the segment, that's the same thing that happened with the 2017 tax cuts that they
Mhm.
did. It was a really interesting strategy. I remember reading about it a couple years ago, where basically like all the benefits are set to expire at the end of the term. That way, if a Democrat comes into office, like all of the backlash again gets put onto them.
Yeah.
You know, the saying that they're raising your taxes or they're doing this or that.
Hmm.
Seems kind of like a similar situation
Right.
here with this tax bill, where
Yeah.
it's like how sports teams they'll backload a contract for a player,
Right.
and they'll be okay for a year or two. Now they can go and shop in free agency, or they can sign a big rookie. But what they're doing is just kicking the can down the road a little bit,
They're
and
kicking
eventually
it,
it comes back to
but
bite them.
at least with the sports teams, right? They do have to kind of set, like, we'll talk Shohei Ohtani, right? Baseball. Um, they still have to put money into an account in order for that to kind of get paid later on. So
Yeah.
it's not just kind of left to kind of do. What the Republicans and Donald Trump are doing is there's no money being set aside like to kind of cover the losses that are coming in, right? It's just like, okay, we're going to run up deficits, and then the next guy will have to deal with it.
Yeah, I remember with Deshaun Watson, when they signed him up in Cleveland, they guaranteed him like $200 million or something. And
Hmm.
the family themselves, because it's one family that owns the Cleveland Browns, they had
Right.
to like liquidate some of their assets to be able to put it in an account,
Hmm.
to prove that you could actually pay him, 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
Yeah.
But going back to this, is it true or false that the bill temporarily increases the child tax credit?
Yeah. True. True.
What about permanently makes millions of families ineligible for the child tax credit?
True.
There
Right.
you go.
Yeah.
Cuts 880 billion in Medicaid over the next 10 years.
Yes.
What about cuts care for millions of Americans and increases out-of-pockets costs for people under the ACA?
Yeah. It does. It takes food out of people's mouths too. One of the crazy things, and I don't know if this is maybe on your question here, right? But if you're like 7 years old, it's like you no longer qualify for SNAP.
Yeah, I
I'm like,
mean that.
what do they expect these 7-year-olds to go out and get jobs and stuff, and they're supposed to do that? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too with a lot of someone that I think does a good job, and you've actually mentioned him on the show before, and in covering a lot of the nuances of a lot of these things that often don't get talked about, is John Oliver.
Hmm.
With Last Week Tonight. He did a special talking about Medicaid and Medicare. And, it's funny because Republicans keep running and talking about, well, a bunch of people that don't deserve Medicaid and Medicare, they're
Yeah.
loathing off of the system. When if you actually look at it, the reality is that there are millions of Americans who should be receiving benefits
Right.
that are not receiving their benefits
Hmm.
because of, a bureaucratic process, because of an insurance company, and it's going to be the same thing here, where it's like, yeah, the Republicans are increasing the child tax credit, which on paper, they can brag about, but what they're actually doing is decreasing the amount of people that are eligible for the tax credit to begin with, which effectively brings them, in a worse place than we started.
Right. It's
And yeah,
and they're doing these things to kind of balance it out, right? And they're doing it like um, for for U.S. citizens, right? It's like, oh, if the child's a U.S. citizen but one of the parents isn't, now they no longer qualify for the tax credit.
oh wow,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That
You
is
know,
that's ridiculous.
and then one of the other ridiculous things is too is like I mean, we have a lot of like foreign workers here, right? We do not have. It's one of the realities that people are like, oh, they're coming in here and taking our jobs. Well, not true. And the fact is that we actually don't have enough workers in this country to fulfill all the jobs and things that we need. So we do need those foreign workers that come in. They're now going to tax people on sending money back home if they're a non-U.S. citizen.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
oh wow, wow,
It doesn't
and
matter whether they're here legally or not.
wow. That's again, that's one of those things where you think about it and like maybe on the surface level, it could, you could see how someone would be okay with it.
Hmm.
But then you actually look at the repercussions
Yeah.
that that has for real life people. Going back, I know people, that have worked for my dad. They're sending their money back to pay to support their family, like to
Right.
like, actually so their family can eat,
Yeah.
like not like so that they can go and buy, a
Hmm.
toy here on Christmas or so that they can go buy this. It's so that they can go and put food on the table.
Exactly.
And it's just, yeah, it's so harmful. And again, it goes back to just like harming our standing on the global stage even more
Hmm.
and more and more. It's every single thing that Trump does.
Yeah.
Um, and coming back here, is it true or false that this big billionaire bailout bill permanently allows Trump to restrict free speech?
I heard that part too, right? I didn't really kind of hear. I heard that after the bill had passed. So that one, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure about.
So
But it doesn't matter. He's trying to do that anyway, right? He's signing all these executive orders and everything to try and take away like free speech and thought, right? And we see what he's doing with the universities, which we talked about earlier. But he's committed to that. If there's anything, right, it's that he doesn't want people criticizing him. He doesn't want people kind of putting forth ideas or trying to rewrite history in the museums. Um, it's just it's just maddening that what is going on.
it's ridiculous. And this one in specific was about NGOs, non-governmental
Mhm.
organizations, and nonprofits. And basically, what the bill says is that Trump can designate any of them as terrorist supporting organizations, which gets rid of their tax break eligibility and harms them in a
Yeah.
bunch of different ways. And we can all see where that is going, obviously. It's just going to go and target organizations that Trump doesn't like and call them,
Right.
terrorist supporters or
Hmm.
whatnot.
Yeah.
It's going to be devastating. Another thing I'm not sure that you are familiar with in the bill is that it bans the regulation of AI.
Yes. So they don't want, like, California has been very proactive on trying to create, within the states regulations on AI. Um, and they want to stop that. The other thing, they're trying to do too, right, is it's always kind of been said when it comes to like some issues, right, as California goes, so goes the rest of the country because we have so many people in there, especially around car admissions and things, right? We've always had tougher restrictions on cars and kind of what they can pollute or what they can put out there. Um, and so car manufacturers actually make the cars to like the California standards because that's where they're going to sell a lot of cars. Um, but they are trying to get rid of all that stuff, right? Anything with regulation around AI, anything with regulation around pollutants, um, yeah, they want it gone with.
But Representative, I thought that Republicans wanted to return the rights back to the states. I thought it was all about
Yeah,
states' rights.
yeah. They're very selective on what they say or what they want, right?
No,
Yeah.
100%, 100% with everything.
Uh-huh. When they don't want to, pay for education or do any of that, right? It's a state right. When they wanted to restrict something or kind of get it under, not let the state be able to kind of say what needs to be done, especially California, a state like California, then it's like, oh, well, no, the federal government needs to control this.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's the same thing that they do with spending when they're like, oh, well, we're gonna spending for this, that's good, that's American, that's patriotic. Spending for this, no, that's
Yeah.
that's bad. That we could
Mhm.
never do that.
Yeah.
It's yeah, the deficit, that was the last thing. So I'll give you this big true or false here. It increases the deficit by $4 trillion or approximately 17 Elon Musks.
That is 100% true.
So
That
how
is
does it do that?
well, it's by lowering the taxes from the highest tax bracket, right? Um, but then at the same time, it doesn't. Uh, well, let's see. That's basically how it does it, right? By lowering the tax bracket, right? It's making extending these tax cuts to the end of the Trump term, and during that time, because the money is not going to be collected, uh, more money is going to be spent, and more money is going to be going out than's coming in, and that's simple economics right there, right? That's really what it is. It's they are collecting less taxes, but the size of the government isn't really kind of going down. Um, it still has all these requirements. Defense spending didn't get cut. They actually added $150 billion to the defense budget. Um, so, that's kind of like what it's going to do.
So, again, it goes back to this. But I thought Republicans were for slashing the federal government.
I
I
know
thought they were.
they're all about fiscal conservatism. When Democrats are in office, and then when it's a Republican president, they kind of forget about that.
Yeah, it's again, need a dictionary here. Absurd,
Mhm.
perplexing. It every single time. It's just they contradict themselves. Um, I I do you think that it has, a good chance of passing in the Senate? Or what do you think is going to unfold there?
I think there's going to be some changes. So it's not going to be the exact same bill. And even Donald Trump said, he told him to fix it,
Mm.
right? So I mean, nobody knows what the hell that means because he's always vague and everything, right? He's arguing with the House, the Republicans there in the House to like go and to pass this to get it done. And then now he's telling the senators like, well, they need to fix it. The bill that he was, telling the Republican House members to vote on and to support. So, we'll see. I think there'll be there's something's going to pass. Um, is it the exact same bill that just got passed in the House? No, I don't think that happens.
Do you think any Democrats will join on and support it?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's. I think if there's going to be massive, if it's going to continue to have massive cuts to SNAP and to Medicare, I think there's a good chance that you don't get any, Democrats on board with it. But
Yeah.
if they change it dramatically, um, maybe I guess it's possible. We'll see what happens. They're more willing to negotiate and kind of work together, I will say, right now in the Senate than they are in the House.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully they, manage to get rid of I think it was like 880 billion that they're going to cut to Medicaid and
Yeah.
Medicare. I mean, it's just like it's every single thing that I figure out more about this bill. It's just like can't how can this even be a serious piece of legislation right
Yeah.
now?
It,
One
it
of the things
should
that
it should have never seen the light of day.
no, it's great, and it only does because Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. But
Mhm.
hopefully Hakeem Jeffries will be able to change that in a couple years' time here.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, with that being said, we'll have to see what ends up happening with this bill. Anything that you're keeping your eyes on that the audience should also be on the lookout for in the next couple days?
Um, no, this week's a district work week, which is why I'm in California. So we're getting around. Gonna go visit some businesses. Went and visited a couple earlier today. Gonna go visit another one after this. We're done taping here. Um, and then do a few more visits kind of later in the week. But it is, that's kind of what we're focused on right now. And it's, as I always said, right, the constituent services and what we can do for people back in the district is the one thing we can control. And so right now, that's kind of what we're focusing on.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there's any constituents listening and they need any of those services, how could they reach out to you or your
Well,
office?
no, they could go. They could find us online. Just well, Google me, Rep Gil Cisneros. It'll pop up the House .gov website, and there, our numbers are listed. You can either call us here locally in the district or out there in DC. We'll take care of you.
Perfect. Final question. What are some of these services that because I don't I'm getting older now and I'm figuring out that there's a lot of useful, things out there
Well,
for us.
there's I mean, obviously, like people have problems with the VA, or they have problems, trying to get their passport or something, or even like we've handled things where like somebody was trying to get a tax refund and it was like taking forever in order to get that, or they had, I think we even had one where a package was damaged by the post office and someone was trying to get their, trying to get that claim settled, and it was kind of being dragged out, and so we were able to help them do that. Social security problems, which I'm expecting that we're going to see a lot more of those now, because now people can't do it, can't call up and do it. They actually have to go to the office now. I mean, it's like 1920 again, or I should say 1940s again, where, we can't use technology. It's, they're actually making people go to the office to kind of do these things. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, with that being said, thank you so much for joining me again, Representative, and
Yeah.
for all the listeners out there, thank you for listening to another episode of the Who Dem podcast.
All right. We'll see you later. Have a good week.